Okay, so let's look next at some code examples of classes and objects, and at least start by making the distinction between these things. So the class is the code that you write. It defines how the object is going to look. I often describe it as the recipe, although perhaps that's not the technical term. Have a look at this slide. I have an article class here. At the top you can see that I have body and title. Those are properties. They are variables that are stored within the class. Because they're protected, they're only available within this class, or if we extend it, they'll still be available inside that child class. I also have 3 methods available in the article class. The first one is the constructor. All of the underscore something methods in PHP are magic methods, which means that you don't call them yourself. PHP will call them if you've declared them. In the case of the underscore construct method, this is what gets called when you instantiate the object. So when you create an article object from this article class definition, the constructor will be run automatically, and typically you will put things here which populate some properties, do any kind of setup or initialization for the class, basically get the object ready to use. I've also got the getBody and getTitle methods, and all those do is allow me to make available to read publicly the body and title properties. I haven't allowed access to those properties directly because I don't want them to be updated by something outside of this class. We call the getBody and getTitle methods that just return the values getters. And you can sometimes see setters as well in a class that accepts values, probably does some validation on them, and then stores them against a particular object. To use my article class then, all I need to do is make sure that code is available. I'm going to talk about auto-loading in the next section, but for now we'll just require that article class. That just makes sure that PHP has seen that code and knows what to do. It knows it's seen the article class declaration, and it will know then how to use it on the next line. When I do new article, that new keyword means that we're taking the class recipe and making a new object out of it. Object-oriented programming is entirely about big words. You've seen a perfectly ordinary variable except it's inside a class, so we call it a property. And the same with the functions. You see them inside classes, and then we have to call them methods, even though everything you know about PHP functions is valid pretty much for a method inside a class. When you create an object, there's no difference there. We have another big word, which is instantiation. And all that means is we're making an object. It's a very big word for a very small concept. And with this, we can create the object, and $article contains an object of type article. Once we've got that, we can start to read and write on that. Here I'm instantiating an article. On the second line, I'm setting a comments property to 6. Notice that this comments property wasn't originally declared in the article class. PHP, for historical reasons, we didn't have any access control or visibility in the first implementations of object-oriented programming back in PHP 4. So PHP, for historical reasons, will treat any unknown property as a new public property, which allows me to write to it. Typically, I like to declare my properties inside my classes, but I wanted to include this to make you aware what will happen if you try to write to a property that doesn't exist. PHP will just allow you to do that, and that property will come into existence just like variables. We don't have to initialize them, and it'll take the value that you give it. I'm also, on the final line on this slide, calling getTitle. That's a method that you saw declared in the article class, and it is available. You can call it. In both cases, accessing the property and accessing the method, we use that object operator of a dash or hyphen, and then the pointy bracket, so you get like an arrow effect. You can use that when you have an object on the left then the arrow, either the name of the property or a method. You can tell the difference because the method will have the round brackets after, just like a function call. I also want to talk about object inheritance because this is really where the reusability of PHP and object-oriented programming comes into play. Inheritance allows us to specify stuff that's the same in multiple classes once, and then just specify the differences between similar classes rather than having to duplicate them or having complicated sort of if it's this do this, if it's that do that logic inside a one size fits all kind of class. Inheritance allows us to identify that common functionality, perhaps some common properties, put them in a parent class and just override specific differences in the child classes. This makes for a much more modular application. You can have several things which are quite alike but do have small differences, and the only extra code you need is the differences. If you've done object-oriented programming in other languages, then look out for PHP because we only have single inheritance. A class has one parent. It doesn't have to have a parent. If it does, it can only have one. The parent has no knowledge of its child classes. You declare a class, it's perfect, it's finished. You see my article class. That's fine, you're finished. You, someone in the future, or even somebody who uses your code as their library and extends it for their own application, can then inherit from your existing class. But the parent class doesn't need any awareness of this. And we can have a parent with a child, which has another child, which has another child, as deeply nested as we like. So depending how many generations you need pretty much is how complex your application is and how you choose to architect it. So in my example, I have my article PHP, and I've declared another class called headline article. See the extends keyword there? That means that my headline article inherits from article. So it extends article, and what that means is it brings all of the public and protected elements, properties and methods from article, and you get those for free in headline article. You don't need to do anything extra. So I get that body, the title, get body, get title, and the constructor all inherited. They're just there. I don't need to do anything extra. So there's your reusable code. In this example, I've also added the excerpt property and a matching getter. So there's a public method getExcerpt, which just returns that excerpt. Finally, I've included an example of using those, so you can see I'm instantiating a headline article and storing it in $A, and then I can call getTitle and getExcerpt. GetTitle comes from the article class originally, but that doesn't matter. The headline article class declares that we extend article, and it's as if we had written everything in article all over again in the headline class. It's available for us to use. So there you have classes, objects, and a little bit of inheritance to give you an idea of how this reusability is going to work, and how we can start to build on those ideas. In the next section, I'm going to talk about organizing your code, where to put your class declarations, and how to auto-load those within your application.